Margot. Welcome to Unleashing Light.
Well, thank you, Liz. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to meet you and to see your group, your viewers. It's really exciting to be here.
Yes, thank you. My honor, actually. So I have Dr. Margot McKinnon, who was in education, was teaching, eventually got her doctorate in education, and is now the author of 2 books. The Exquisiteness of Being Human, and then also the Body, Mind, Spirit, Soul, Oneness Dominance Theory, a guide to
Elevating.
thank you. Elevating 5 dimensions of yourself. So yeah, we're going to just crack into that today. It's got such information in there, and we'll just begin with kind of how you got started on that book and what led you into that.
Well, thank you. Here's how my beginning point. I wrote my first book, this one, The Exquisiteness of Being Human, and I published this one in 2006. And it was actually a homework assignment when I was doing my master's degree. And the homework assignment was, how are the body, mind, spirit related? Well, that's my favorite topic of all time, all about spirituality. What is our spirit? What's our body, our mind? What's the difference? I've always loved that because as a child, and I think some of your viewers are going to relate here, because as a child, I was one of those little kids who could see spirits, who could hear them talking, who I could see into the future. Like I was shown things in the future, but at the time I was just a little kid. So I didn't know that they were the future. I thought they were, happening right now. But it's only as an adult woman now that I can look back and say, oh, I was being delivered some things that are going to be happening in the future. And particularly in my life and kind of the people close to me. So I had that as a little child, and I used to really know that I had a spirit in my body that had come in, and it was kind of confused about how to be human. And I used to lie on my bed and think, how long do I have to stay here? As if this life on earth was a temporary thing. How long do I have to stay here? How long do I have to do this? And I tell these stories, in many of my talks, but I was a very super sensitive child, and I could feel the energy on things all the time. So many of you can relate to that. And I actually, it was kind of funny, Liz, because I found out that my brother watched one of my podcasts last week. Like, my family doesn't really, I don't go out telling everybody what I'm doing, but he watched my podcast with my sister-in-law. Because my sister-in-law phoned me and like, hey, what are you doing? What's up? Oh yeah, I've been on these podcasts. Which podcast? So they watched them. My brother watched them. And so she wrote me back and she said, oh yeah, when you were telling all your stories about how you felt like a stranger here on earth. And I used to see spirits. And when I visited my grandmother's house, I used to have to share a bed with my older sister. And she said, oh, I remember that you would go, well, how are we supposed to fall asleep with all these people in our room? And I remember her diving under the covers, and I dive under too, not knowing why we were diving under the cover. And it wasn't until I was like a grown woman that she said, you used to freak me out because you'd be, well, how were we supposed to fall asleep? Like, and I'd be like, who are you seeing? Because I had a very nurturing family. Like, they supported me because it was part of our family culture. Usually one in the family would get it. And I happened to be the one. So I was a very sensitive, kind of ethereal little kid. But when my brother watched it and he turned to his wife, because his wife emailed me and she said, oh yeah, he turned to me and said, she used to smell her fork out of the dishwasher to make sure she got the right one. Birds. And I had forgotten, because you you live in your own normal, right?
Yeah.
This is my normal. And yeah, that brings me back. Oh yeah, I used to smell my fork because there were layers and layers of energy on forks that people had used that fork, and now I'd have to put that fork in my mouth. But I had to learn how to get over it, Liz. Like, I love going to restaurants. I have to be able to eat off a fork somebody else has used. But it was just, if any of you out there are going, oh, I used to be like that, I had that. Or maybe you didn't get over it, just start thinking about, oh, you know what? That's my spirit. It's down here on earth. It's got to learn how to be human. It's got to get inside this body. It's got to move its arms and legs and all of that. So I was a little kid like that, very sensitive. And then, you know, I grew older and I had my own kids. And as sensitive as I was, I did my university. I had my BA and my B.Ed. I was a high school English teacher, which I loved. I got married. I had 3 kids. Unfortunately, I got divorced too. So I was a single mom early with 3 little kids, managing them. But I had a near-death experience. Well, I had one when I was 18, but the more important one happened when I was about 36, 37. And my body had just dropped to the ground. And I was in, like, with people around me and everything. It had dropped to the ground. And I was at, you know, like, I was doing a ceremony, okay? And there were no, like, it was a fasting ceremony, like no food or water.
Sure.
So it was no food or water. So I had dropped to the ground. And my spirit came out, and it went out to the most beautiful, unconditional love of light and peace, and just such joy. Like, I went up there like this, Liz, like I breathed it in like this, and it just infused into my whole body. And then my mom came down and she said, oh, you can't come any farther than this. You have to go back down. And I did come back down because I had 3 little kids.
Sure.
But when I came to, because I sort of looked around and I didn't know where I was. Like, I didn't know I was human yet again. Like, I have what are these? These things, and body and all of this. So I had to kind of get back into that. I was back down here as a human. And I realized at that time, you know what? Why can't we bring that unconditional love down here? Why? Because when I came to, I thought, this kind of seems like an unnecessarily harsh and abrasive place to live down here. Why do people get into arguments? Why are they yelling? Why are they criticizing? Why are they judging? Why don't you just find your passion and joy and go and do that?
Yeah, I have the same questions.
Yes. And then sometimes, you know, I get that question from viewers all the time, like, how come I got trapped in this family that just wanted to destroy my spirit? And it happens, right? So, but then my son, when he was about 3, he told me as he was going to bed one night, you know, Mom, before I was born, I was talking to God. And I said, oh, is like God male or female? Neither. God is like white. It's like this white space, but you know it's God. So I was talking to God, and God told me that I had to come down and be a human. I said, oh, how did you feel about that? Well, I didn't want to come. Why not? Well, because it's not very nice down here, Mom. And it's so nice over there. And he said, but God told me I had to come. So I asked him if he'd show me my mother. And he took like a little photograph of you, like out of a picture album, and he showed it to me. And this will be your mother. And I said, oh, she looks mean, and I don't want to come down and be her son. I'm behaving just as my mother, because my mother was very good to me when I was a little girl and had all these experiences, right? So I said, okay, so what did God say to that? Well, God said, that's my mother, and I have to come down and be human. So I got inside your body. And then when I was born, I looked at your face and I thought, oh, you're beautiful. And I'm glad you're my mom. But you see, my son was born feet first, dead. He was blue. The cord was around his neck. He was being hung all the way down. And so by the time they got him out, he was not breathing and his heart had stopped. So they had brought him over to this thing, and all I could hear was, "Come on, baby, breathe. Come on, baby, breathe. Come." And they had oxygen on him and everything, and he came to. So I think that conversation happened at that time, where he had a decision. Did he want to come in and be human, or was he going to stay over there? And he's a very, he listens to that voice and has in his life. And when I was a little kid, I'm going to just fast forward here. When I was a little kid at 4 years old, about his age at that time, I was playing in my living room with my little doll, Michael. I was putting him to bed, and I heard this voice out of nowhere say, "You are to be a teacher." That's how it sounded to me. And I said, okay, I will. And I stayed true to that, even though many, many other opportunities opened up for me that would have made me a whole lot more money and would have been a whole lot more sexy than being a high school English teacher. But anyway, I made that commitment at 4 years old to be a teacher. And the thing is that I get lots of questions from viewers, and they want to know, "Hey, Margot, why do you think that voice comes in for you so strongly? Why do you think you have such a strong soul purpose?" And I said, I think it's because I listen to that voice and I do what it says. You are to be a teacher. And I've watched a few near-death experiencers just to see if any of theirs were like mine. And they say that, many of them say, "Oh, in my life review, I was shown like photographs, and I was shown like little video footage, like a movie." And I thought, my son was shown his blueprint in a photograph. I find that interesting.
And why are some of us prone to having these NDEs, or maybe prone to just hearing these voices and it being so much more prevalent in our lives? Is there a specific reason that some of us get it so strongly versus others?
Well, it's such a good question because it's so normal for me. I don't know any different. Like, I don't know what it would be like not to have this. I have this voice that tells me what my blueprint is. A lot of near-deathers come down and they say, "Oh, you forget your blueprint. You forget your blueprint." And I thought, I didn't forget mine. Like, I'm not allowed off of mine, as a matter of fact. If I step off mine, I can feel a nudge, I can feel a nudge, I can feel a nudge, a nudge, a nudge. And I don't know if this is a story that needs to be told, but I'm telling it anyway. We'll see what happens. I had a man in Scotland, and he said, "Hey, Margot, why do you think that voice comes in so strongly for you?" And I got thinking about it, and I thought, oh, well, probably because if I were in the Garden of Eden, I wouldn't have eaten the apple. Like, if I were told by God, "Margot, you can eat from all of this beautiful, but just don't eat from that tree," I would have said, okay. And I think that's why it comes in so strongly for me.
Interesting.
And when you second guess yourself, and when you take a turn that, inside your spirit and your soul knows whether you're on your blueprint.
Yeah.
So I had a client yesterday with a chronic disease. And I said, well, we got talking about his blueprint and everything. And I said, but you're so far off your blueprint. You're so far off your blueprint that your body's disappearing with this. So let's go into a meditation. And I do white light meditation. So I go back into that space of unconditional love, peace, where God lives. I go up there and I do my meditations up there. I said, let's go into one right now. I'm going to show you how to do it. And then have a conversation with God about putting you back onto your blueprint.
And is that the reason that most people have diseases and are getting sick, is because they're off their blueprint, or are there like multiple different reasons that it happens?
I mean, I think it's so complicated, right? So I don't want to simplify things for your viewers, because we'll have so many people watching this. But what I'd like to think about is, if we go back to, I was told at 4 years old, you are to be a teacher. I stayed on that. And then I ended up, I had to end my marriage. My spirit was getting crushed in that marriage.
Can you speak to that a little bit? Like, in what way?
Well, I don't like to throw anybody under the bus when I'm talking, but it was just, I remember walking past the mirror and my eyes were dead.
And
my spirit, I could hear my spirit saying, but I want to be part of your life too. My life was entirely about somebody else, so that I couldn't have really any of the life my spirit came here to live. So I had to end it because, my spirit was getting crushed. But I think for your viewers' sake, I should just introduce this, what the spirits told me about this, because this will give us a tool that we can talk about this in better.
Perfect.
So let's sort of recap this. We know there's a space. We came from unconditional love, that beautiful white space. We came down here with a life that our spirit wants to live, and our spirit will go back into that unconditional love. My little son there saying it's not nice down here, but it's so nice over there. Why can't we make it nice down here? When I was a high school teacher, I thought, this is my classroom, and I'm in charge of creating a very sacred space for all these teenagers to be seen and heard, where they can explore who they are, because I taught literature, and great literature is about the human experience. I'm going to create a beautiful learning experience for them that they can't wait to come to class, because they just keep growing and learning and laughing and having fun, and they have that unconditional love and support so that they can create the life their spirit came here to live. And I thought, if more of us did that, like everybody who's watching today, if we all put in an effort to say, well, I'm going to create that space wherever I go. Even if you're at the grocery store, how can you create the space that you're in beautiful white light energy of unconditional love and peacefulness? Okay, so we know that space exists. I was a high school teacher, and my school board wanted me to become a high school principal.
Good old school board.
They wanted me to be a high school principal. So they said, could you go get your master's degree? Okay, because you had to have a master's to be a principal. So here I am, single mom, 3 kids. They're all in primary school. One's heading to junior high. I have a house. I've got yard work, the whole thing, right? Can you do a master's degree? Okay. Off I go. I'm very obedient, like to my sole purpose, right? Okay. So off I go to get my master's degree. And I was actually doing it in teacher professional learning. How do you create organizational culture for teachers to want to do professional growth? And so I am very much, and it's sort of part of my blueprint template, is to, how do we create the experience for people? So that they can grow and learn. So while that wasn't my grand thing, I wrote my thesis on that topic, but the very last class I took was called The Philosophy of Mind. And it was, the first homework assignment was, how are the body, mind, spirit related? And I went home and I cleared my space and I went up into that white light energy. And I asked that voice that talks to me, you are to be a teacher. And I said, so what's the answer? How are the body, mind, spirit related? And this like I'd always heard this voice, but I never had seen it before. And this voice came in, but this time it took a shape and it was massive in my living room. And it was standing there like as if it was so excited that I had asked that question. And so I asked the question and it said, we have 5 dimensions of self, not just 3. Just as we have 5 fingers on each hand, 5 toes. We have 5 dimensions. Just have a look. Have you attended to all your 5 dimensions? So we have, and yes, this is my book, but I made this cover so I can do like workshops like this right in your group. So if we look over here, we have 5 dimensions. We have a body. We have a mind. Our mind is like our logical, rational self. It's our system self. Does our taxes, our mortgage, all those things. Our spirit, and I've been talking about spirit today. So what is our spirit? And what's the difference between our spirit and our soul? Our spirit is the one, for my son, it was the one that was talking to God, that he said, and then I had to get inside your body. His body was already inside my body, right?
Yeah.
But his spirit had to get inside my body because his spirit was iffy as to whether it was going to come or not. So our spirit came from unconditional love. It will go back into unconditional love. It's the part of us that remembers that unconditional love. It remembers that space. Our soul is our sense of purpose. And I'll tell you, and I'll in a second, once I get right around here, I'll tell you why it's so important that these are distinguished. So our soul is our purpose. Why were we put here? And that's people's most grand question. Why am I here? Oneness, I call it oneness, but I didn't have space, Liz, to put all of oneness on here. So I just put one. This is all my little handwriting and everything. Oneness is your connection to God, creator, universe, source. It is your sense of connection and belonging. So if you're lonely, it means your oneness dimension is low. You know?
Yeah.
So these are your 5 dimensions. But it also said you're born dominant in one of them and you grow the others over time. Or not, if you don't want to. So body dominant people, their spirit came in, loves the physical, tangible world, hair, makeup, nails, fashion, shopping, Facebook marketplace, Kijijing, buying, selling, getting the perfect purse, the best dinner party. I'm not a body dominant person. So, you know, sometimes I have to tell my body dominant friends, you know, I'm just like, I'm more over here. I'm not, you know, so interested in shopping, although I will happily go and see all the things that you bought, but I don't want to go. So anyway, I love my body dominant friends because they make my life more fun because I stay over here too much. And they bring that sense of joie de vivre, of happiness and fun and all that. Body dominance. Mind dominance, very logical, rational systems. They like to be the manager because they can manage everybody and get us all into our systems and so they'll be like CEO, manager, your boss. And as a former teacher, high school teacher, I say that our school systems are too mind dominant.
And so is the mind dominance a little bit of like where you can get quite rigid?
Oh, Liz, nailed it. Nailed it. When you're stressed, so if you're a healthy mind dominant, you've developed your other dimensions as well. My dad is a very healthy mind dominant person. But yes, you can get very rigid over here, black and white. This is right. This is wrong. This is how you do it. You know, so a mind dominant.
Everybody else how to live. The people that are telling everybody else how to live their life.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. And everybody needs to be fixed by them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this kind of mind dominance. And, you know, my daughter is mind dominant. And she really, like, I wish I'd known it actually, Liz, when she was little, because I didn't know as a little girl that she needed me to tell her exactly this is the right way to do that and this is the wrong way. I think there's so many ways to do things that's what makes life fun.
Mm-hmm.
But no, she needed, this is how you do it. This is the right way. This is the wrong way. And we actually have had these conversations now that she's grown up, and she says, you know, when I was a little girl, I thought you didn't love me.
Aww.
And I said, well, why, what would ever make you, because you just wouldn't tell me that this is exactly how you cut a carrot for a stir fry. This is exactly how you do, because you were always going, well, find your own way. There's so many ways. And to me, being a mind dominant little girl, I thought that that was a sign you didn't love me.
So
Do you see what I mean?
the perception can be so far from the intention.
Correct, right? So, and you know, you can really look at how people are when they're stressed. So a body dominant person stressed, imagine that their identity is in the body. That's the part of the life that makes them so happy, but they might max out their credit card because they're shopping when they're stressed because they need more stuff, or renovating when they don't have the money, and or going and getting Botox, and you know, like just plastic surgery because they're worried about getting aging, or all this Ozempic and everything. So really looking at, and you know, if you want to go and get whatever you want in plastic surgery, just know, is it because I want a new set of teeth, you know, I don't know, those teeth. I want the new enamels or whatever, I don't know. I want a new set of teeth. If you really want that, but just pay attention to whether you want it because you're stressed, because you think nobody thinks you're pretty anymore. You know?
Yeah.
So then, mind dominant, when you talked about rigid, when they're stressed, because they created the systems, when those systems start falling apart or people start rebelling against those systems. I knew in my classroom, if I planned out a lesson that was rigid, the kids would rebel. We needed a sense of fluid so that they had input. But if what they'll end up doing is micromanaging everybody at work back into their system. But the reason why people are rebelling is because the system's falling apart. So really a healthy mind dominant would step back and say, people are rebelling against my systems. Let's have a team meeting and let's have a look at these systems. Where do we need to tweak? What kind of experience is everybody having here? How can we make that experience better?
How does it happen if there's so many mind dominant people in systems, right? Like if you're in your school system or your mental health system or your health system, it's like they're not of the space to recognize it a lot of times.
Correct. So my goal is to help these ones get their skill sets up so they have the courage and the skill set to step up to leadership positions and do it differently. So spirit dominant people, remember that life is about unconditional love, joy, peacefulness, about creating the life your spirit came here to live, about doing the things that your spirit loves. So I'm practicing mine right now because I'm in this leadership position, and I told my entire team I am a spirit dominant leader, and we will be doing things differently. So, for example, a mind dominant was taking our minutes at our last meeting. We had a new person on board, and I said, "Oh, we'd like to give you a warm welcome. And I want to know, number one, what can we do as a team to make your experience with us better?" In other words, what can we be doing so that we are your favorite place you've ever worked? When I got and she was answering it back, and I thought, okay, we can do that. Excellent. Yes, good point. Good point. Wonderful. Great. Well, the mind dominant didn't hear any of that. They only heard, do this, do that, missed the subtle, warm welcome. How can we create a better experience? So we need to attune our ears to hear that. And that needs to go into the minutes. Yeah. So that anybody else who's reading that minutes can see that this is a new style of leadership. So spirit dominant people, but when they are stressed, they see the world as overly harsh and abrasive, unnecessarily so. And then they want to go home because very often they feel like a stranger down here and they just want to go home now. Especially if they came from a family of body-mind people. Can you imagine, say, a spirit-dominant boy who wants to be an artist, but his mind-dominant dad or mom wants him to be a hockey player or an engineer, and he's much more of the visionary creative? You're going to get these kind of clashes. That's why it's so important to look at your children and really honor who they are as a separate person from you, but also to look at, well, who are your parents and are you impacted by their expectations, their version of what being a human being means?
I think we're all impacted to some extent.
Oh, we totally are. Yes, of course. But are we conscious of it?
Oh, yeah.
Are we saying, oh, I see now? Because mind dominant, unhealthy, stressed out ones, they can start seeing everybody as an idiot. Like, look at all the idiots out there. Look at what's that?
I said, I know a few of those people that see people as idiots everywhere.
Yes, yes. What a bunch of idiots. I work with a bunch of idiots. I was driving with my friend. She's mind dominant. And she said, oh, look at that idiot up there. Oh, that idiot here. Oh, and this. And then finally she looked at me. I bet you think I'm stressed. Kind of do. Because I hadn't said anything up until that point, right? And so it's just, if you're a child and you have a parent that's going around idiot, 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 they'll come to think they will think they're an idiot. Right? So it's really, really important how you talk with your kids and recognizing if you're a body dominant. I've had some people say, well, I'm actually a spirit dominant, but I look body dominant, perfect. And it's because my mom, if I looked perfect and my bed was perfectly made and my room was absolutely perfect, then she'd leave me alone and I could go around into my spirit world and play around in there.
Interesting. So
interesting, right?
Mechanism, very young.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So a spirit dominant, I love working with spirit dominant people because they have so much in them unexplored, or they don't have the courage to take on leadership or to go after that big dream because they probably grew up in a house like this. But you see, I grew up in a house like this, but they totally understood I had this spirit thing going on.
Yeah, so lucky for you, because that's very rare, I feel like.
It is. And you know what happens? Because I did my PhD, right, on if we were going to bring spirituality into education, what would that look like? So I had to do a lot of my lit review and looking at the research on little kids who have these experiences. Well, if they have a parent that says, now don't be so silly, that's just your imagination, pat them on the head, just, ignore that. The child will, as they grow older, they will question reality because that experience is more real. Like that voice that told me you are to be a teacher. Hey, I'm still teaching, just not in the classroom. I followed that my whole life. That was more powerful to me than if anybody, my guidance counselor said, well, Margot, why don't you try being this? Well, no, I'll listen to that voice, right? But I think that's why that voice comes in so strongly to me. I think it gave me my blueprint. I think it told me to be a teacher, and anytime I got off of it or I felt exhausted by it, it would give me something else to lift me up, to keep me there. But if we look over here, and I want to finish this off because I want to get back to that thought too, but soul dominant people, they know they have a purpose in life. Mm-hmm. And they don't want to do anything else. Like they don't want to, I don't know, make lipstick and sell lipstick, or get a, if they're me, who wants to help people with their spiritual understandings, and for spirit dominant people to understand how to find their joy down here. Because for many, many years, I really just wanted to go home. Like I didn't understand why I had to stay down here. Like I used to say, how much longer do I have to stay down here?
Yeah. Can you tell me how you worked through that? Because I feel like a lot of people hit that and then they're lost and they're stuck and they don't know how to transition out of it.
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Liz, because I was at that, when the theory came in, mm-hmm. I was in that place of wanting to go home. Now, I wouldn't have done anything about it, even though as a little kid, I used to think about it a lot. And I do tell some stories about things I did that were, but anyway, I remember seeing my sister, body dominant, mm-hmm. and we were in Stowe, Vermont, and we were borrowing her friend's house, and her friend, and she had on the friend's Afghan up wrapped around her neck, right up to here. She was drinking out of a cup, like, you know, her friend's cup. We had tea, she had chocolate, like everything. The experience was beautiful. There I am, barely sitting on the chair, like just on the edge. Imagine, as a little kid, I would smell my fork to see if it was my fork. Now you're asking me to go into somebody else's house and you're sitting there with somebody else's blanket. Can't you feel all the energy of that blanket? You know, I was in that place, right? Mm-hmm. And so I remember looking at her and I thought, oh, you know what the difference between you and me, and yet we have the same parents, we look the same, is that you're at home everywhere and I'm at home nowhere. And it was in that moment I thought, you know what, I've got to find the exquisiteness of my human experience. Why am I here? What now? Imagine also, I was coming out of a divorce, so I was really kind of shut down emotionally. My spirit had been crushed. I had to recover my spirit, is what I was doing. So I had to recover my spirit, and I had to ask her, I call my spirit Margot, my love, or sweetheart. Oh, come on, sweetheart. What would you like me to do? Because it's my number one job is to create the life my spirit wants to live. Mm-hmm. So I just go, sweetheart, what do you want me to do? Where do you want to go today? I'll even say, sweetheart, what do you want to eat today? So I went about, and I spent about 2 years recovering my spirit and reminding myself. So what I think I was doing was bringing my spirit back onto her blueprint, where she's happy, engaged, love being human, committed to being here. So I did all the things. I was exploring everything. I was even exploring to see if I was an artist, Liz. Maybe I'm a fashion designer. Maybe I really know how to cook. As it turns out, I really know how to teach people about their spirit. As it turns out, that's what I do.
But you did have to dabble in like quite a few things to like really find your way back.
Yeah, I did. I had to really explore and experiment, and you know, I started writing. Oh, I didn't bring it to the table, but say I'm going to pretend, but this is more my agenda for what I do all day, you know, for work. It's full. But I keep a book, and I get a new one on my birthday. And I put in there everything that I do that's fun for my spirit. And I also put in my visions, my dreams, my what I want to happen over the next few years. Like tonight, I'm going off to, I live in Canada, Alberta, the province of Alberta. So tonight is the Alberta College of Art and Design open house. So I want to go and really support like new artists and see what they're working on and let me hear their stories and all of that. So I'm going there tonight. So I'll put my ticket in my book and, so I just go and explore like, what do I love to do? And then, so that was 2 years of recovering my spirit so that my spirit was shining out my eyes again. And then lo and behold, as I was on track to become a high school principal, I think this universe said, Margot, you're not becoming a high school principal because that will crush your spirit. You will be in such a mind-dominant environment. And I really think that's why it waited till that last class I had to take and boom, gave me the big vision, which put this whole, so that vision became this book. This is my travel guide to getting my spirit back, which I only have 10 copies left because I sold out. And then I wrote this one, which is more of a how I did it. Here's how I did it. How I reclaimed all parts of myself in here and how you can do it too. And you were asking earlier about why some people can hook in. And well, I also show you how you can hook in here. So for body, mind people who want to go over here, but it's also for these people who want to go over here. But as far as my blueprint, I think the universe will step in and correct for me if I'm stepping off my blueprint and it doesn't want me to go there.
And the goal is to be balanced in all 5 dimensions.
Well, balanced and grow. So, so soul dominance, what do they do when they're stressed? They really beat themselves up because they have this soul purpose. They feel like they're running out of time, that they're, what's going to happen? I'm not good enough. And so they get really in that hamster wheel of just never feeling like they're good enough. And that's a stress behavior. So, my client yesterday, I said, okay, I want you to stop. I want you to go back up into the white light, go back up there, get back in touch with your spirit and to source, get back up there, start again. So don't let those things keep roiling around. And oneness dominant people, they value connection and belonging more than others. Mm-hmm. And they want everybody to be working together. They want nice big communities. They want them harmonious communities. They get hurt by other people's loneliness. They get hurt by anybody who's being excluded or marginalized.
So how do they exist in the world?
Well, I had this woman say to me, well, Margot, don't you get so overly consumed about the starving kids wherever it was? Mm-hmm. And I said, not really, because I've decided in my life that the universe gave me a big task to do, a soul purpose task, and I just stay in my lane and I do that task. And some other soul dominant people, where that's their soul purpose to take care of those kids, I trust they're doing it. I'll stay in mine and do this. And if we all stayed and said, well, what is my soul purpose? Well, I'm going to do it to the absolute max best I can. You can do yours max best you can. You do yours. People who are environmentalists, if you can do all the best you can, if we all did that, our world would be a much nicer place.
So I have a question, and I'm trying to figure out how to ask it because I think it's multiple questions all at once, but so, some of my background is in mental health. And so I'm, through that education, I've kind of learned like, oh, well, substance use or, addiction is the root of trauma. And as I'm listening to this, I'm going, well, is it like these lost spirit and soul? And is the trauma really just a trauma to our spirit, but we don't identify it that way? I don't know. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I'm glad you're asking that, because our Indigenous people here in Alberta will say the reason why alcohol is called spirits, wine and spirits,
Yeah.
because the alcohol will make you feel like you're in spirit, where you don't have to feel the weight of the world. Think about people who come home from this mind dominant job, and instead of going for a run and doing something that will soothe the spirit, they'll go and have a bottle of wine, because it keeps you in that spirit space. It's a replacement.
That is fascinating, because it's like the behaviors of somebody who's like in the crux of the addiction can be so rageful and so, just out of control, but really it's like a broken spirit that's so gentle.
Correct. And you know what? I had a client like that. It wasn't the client, it was the mother of somebody like that who had a drug addiction.
Yeah.
And had it for 10 years, living in the basement, hadn't worked from the time 21 to 31, completely consumed in this addiction. But then the spirit said to me, tell her to go and get a childhood picture of him when he was happy and excited about his life. Tell her to put it on, I have a prayer table, like where the people I love, their pictures are there, and I light a candle by it every morning. So anyway, tell her to get a picture of him when he was healthy. And so she put a picture of him in his Halloween costume where he's Superman, he's jumping off the couch all excited.
Yeah.
And she thought, this is the one, because I want him to be a Superman again. So she put the picture there, not realizing, and at the time I didn't even realize the significance either, Liz. So she put the picture there, and then she emailed me 2 days later and she said, you'll never believe what happened. He came up out of the basement and he said, I want to get off of this once and for all. I'm going to talk to my doctor. I'm going to see how, it was Oxycontin. How do I get off this medication, prescription meds? I want to get off of it. This would have been about 18 months ago. I want to get off of it. So that started about 18 months ago. He's now ready to defend his master's thesis at a university in Europe. And he ran a marathon this past spring. And he is not looking back. So now that I'm really looking at this idea of blueprints and photographs and the little video footages that we get, because sometimes when I'm hearing my clients, they're telling me their story, but I'm watching a video. And I thought, oh, I'm watching the video of their blueprint. That's what's happening. I'm watching their blueprint. And the story they're telling me is a disconnect with what their real blueprint was supposed to. They've fallen off their blueprint. And some people will say, oh, that drug addiction was why you were here. It's on you chose to have a drug addiction. Well, I don't think any spirit came down here saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to become an alcoholic and a drug addict, and I'm going to ruin all my relationships, and I'm going to live in my mother's basement until I die. I don't think any spirit came down, chose to do that. I think circumstances, and in his case, he had an injury and then he was put on Oxycontin and then he became a drug addict, right? Yeah. It's not that he was out on the streets going, oh, can you give me Oxycontin? It just, that can just creep up on you. So anyway, I thought, okay, so what we were doing by putting that picture there is we were bringing him back to his blueprint so he could have a do-over.
That's so interesting. And then I'm also wondering just the aspect of like the ones that overdose or they die from their addiction or they have an NDE as a result of their addiction. I guess more so the ones that are gone, that are dead and don't come back from addiction. Do you have any insight to that on what then happens to them on the other side?
Well, yes, I do have some thoughts on that. I live all day in this space, Liz. So it's like, what else do you want to know? And if I don't know, then I go for a run and then the spirits, like the universe tells me what the answer is. So I thought I should have my own podcast where I go, oh, and here's what it said about that.
Yeah, I think you should.
I watched Liz, and then as I went out for a run, they clarified for me. But anyway, When my mom passed, when that would have been almost 27 years ago. And then she came back to me about 2 years after she passed. And she said, what happens is you go over to the other side, and then you have to come back in and wear around all the people who are really significant to you in your life. Like wear the consciousness around so that you can get a feeling of what it was like exactly from their point of view to have, like in this case, her as my mother. Mm-hmm. And she was almost like taking notes, you know, like, okay, so what was it? And she said, don't worry, tell me everything, because good and bad, because I need to know. Because once I get all the pieces, like I have to go to your dad and my brother and you know, like all these people, right? I have to collect all the information. Once I collect it and I can say, what kind of human being was I get to go to the next level. Well, first of all, I decided after she told me that, I'm going to start that process now. I'm not going to wait for my judgment day. I'm going to go around and what kind of human being am I for you? What kind of mother am I? What kind of a teacher am I? Mm-hmm. And I used to have my students write to me on the first day of school, how could I be your favorite teacher of all time? And I wanted to make sure that I was fulfilling their needs. Like, what do you exactly need from a teacher so that I can be the best one you've ever had? So anyway, you know, she told me that. And then I got thinking, she didn't tell me this, but over time I realized, then you come back down for a do-over. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you try again. So for example, I used to be really shy. Mm-hmm. Like I couldn't do public speaking or anything. Mm-hmm. So I realized, and this is before my book came in. So I realized I'm really shy, and, you know, speaking in front of public, like it's something you're going to have to do in your life. Why not be really good at it? You know, I told my students that were shy, you know, walking into a room full of strangers is something you're going to have to do for the rest of your life. So I'm going to show you how to be really good on the first day of school, walking into a room full of kids and knowing how to do that confidently. So for me, it was shyness as one of my human weaknesses. There are many. Mm-hmm. And I've tried to get rid of them, but I'm sure there's still more that aren't in my consciousness, but still. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to work on my shyness. And so I took a thing at school where I had to get up and do 5-minute talk. And it was a hard audience because I was in a school where they'd throw paper balls at your head if they didn't like what you said. They were mean, heckle, the whole thing. So anyway, I'd get nervous 2 weeks before, then I'd get nervous the week before, then I'd get nervous the day of. And I always remember sitting down and saying, I forgot to get nervous. So I thought, oh, I've cracked my nervous, but I cracked it even more because I made this film on invisible students, which are actually spirit dominants because they come in like ghosts and sit. And I wanted teachers to know how to reach them, because there are very often those sensitive poets, artists. And I wanted teachers to understand how to reach these kids. So I made this film. It was about 5 minutes long. And I was on this stage. I was the keynote speaker. I had my little wireless mic pack on. And I had my big film behind me. And I was looking out into my audience, which was ginormous because I was the keynote speaker. And I looked out there of all these teachers and I thought, I am now so at home in this space, being on a stage, doing these talks. And the thing is, how could I have, you know, the universe gave this to me. I'm the guardian of it. I've got to get it to as many people as I can. Like, I'm hoping your viewers, if you know of anybody struggling, get a copy, give it to them. It will help them understand how to get their life, their blueprint back on track. Absolutely. Not that I realized that when I wrote this, but this is what now, that's my next. I've got to write something now about the blueprint. So, because, you know, this whole blueprint, audiences ask me questions all over the place. So I'm just keep expanding my knowledge in this area. But to answer your question, what would happen to a drug addict, alcoholic? They go over there, they do their life review like everyone else. Mm-hmm. They'll go and find out what it was, what ended up, how they got off their blueprint in the first place. They're going to have to wear around the feelings of In this case, if this boy had stayed the way he was, he would have had to wear around his mother and what her feelings were. Because that is, Liz, you can imagine how scary when your child is going off the rails. Panic.
Yeah.
So scary. Like I had to help a lot of kids in my class, like over the years, get off drugs and alcohol, and their parents would come in, and sometimes not. But I would just say, well, you know what, we work as a community, and part of my job is to help you raise your child. And I'm a trained professional, and I will help you raise your child. We're going to get them there this year. But a lot of that was just me asking them, so you go to alcohol because you haven't created the life your spirit wants to live.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. So are you going to schools, Margot, and like teaching this, and, you know, or are you going to events and expos and things like that? How much of your time are you actually spending in the schools?
Well, I do like teachers' conventions and that.
Mm-hmm.
And I do masses number of teachers all at once. I love being invited to come in and do professional development days. The problem is it's a mind dominant system. So unless there's a courageous administrator in that school who will open the door to say, you know what, let's open the door to this and see where it goes. So we need courageous administrators in education to say we need to do things differently. I have people in other countries who are taking it straight on, like Tanzania, for example, a school in Tanzania. They say, oh, can we translate some of the model into, you know, because this would work really, really well with our kids. Or Montessori schools, because they have more flexibility. I really want to help change our school systems. I need helpers. I don't have kids in school anymore, but I was doing teachers conventions, but now I'm with podcasts and I'm working with more people in my own space. And I'm hoping that the more teachers I get hearing this, they can bring it into their classroom and start seeing their kids.
Are teachers, so I will be spreading it around for sure.
You know, if teachers, like I've had teachers using it as a book club, as a professional learning tool. So I put a conversation guide at the end of each chapter. And I have a lot of teacher examples in here. And I ask teachers to reflect on this, because have a look at these kids. Like, you can see who the body dominant ones are, who the mind dominant ones, but these spirit dominant ones, they're so ethereal and they're so sensitive that quite often, just to get from home to school, they're already saturated by the human experience. They're shut down. So in my classroom, my very last year before I went off to Oxford to do my PhD, I thought, this is my last class, likely, this group. And they're all spirit dominants. I can see they had the hoodies, they're ethereal, they don't talk, they just, and I thought, I'm going to create the experience for them to love coming here. And their class started at 8:45 in the morning. So it was already a big effort for them to get over there on time. So I'd have the kettle going and I had herbal teas. And I have a kind of a big, loud teacher voice, according to my mom. And so I talked in much more hushed tones when they came in, and I'd say, good morning. Now listen, I've put the kettle on, so you could, make yourself a cup of herbal tea. We're going to start by reading, because they were massive readers. And yet they were in the non-academic, like the not going to university stream. But I found quite often the very clever, creative, wise and deep thinkers were sitting there in my non-academic classes. I used to ask them, well, why don't you want to go to academic and be in university? Because it's boring over there. And so what they were basically saying is just too mind dominant over there, and I don't want to go. But how do we still nurture them and not feel like there's something wrong with them? There's nothing wrong with them.
So how did you manage the kid when you're setting that very nice, warm, cozy tone, but you know, and they're eating that up, but how did you deal with the kid that was coming in and resisting that and pushing it away? And being loud and obnoxious. How did you pull that one in?
I had one, well, I've had more than one, Liz, but let's just say I've got one coming to mind. And he was exactly as you described. I used the word pest because he used to interrupt and be throwing things. He was in my grade 10 class. But one day he came in and he wasn't talking at all. He just sat quiet. I'm not going to lie. I enjoyed it for a day. And in fact, then because I thought, oh, I can teach my face off because he's just sitting there quiet. And the next day he was quiet again. So I thought, oh, I've got to make up for lost time. But I still had my eye over here going, there's something not right. Mm-hmm. So then one day he came in and he had dyed his hair all black. And he was wearing all black clothes. Then the next day he came in and he had cut marks up here. So I said, can you come and sit with me? I see you have cut marks on your arms. Oh, that's just an accident. And I said, it's not. I said, something's happening to you. Tell me, you can tell me what it is. And if I know how to help you, I'll help you. If I don't know how to help you, I will find somebody right now. Because it happened that I had a prep time right after. So I said, you're not going to your next class. I'll phone your teacher. You're staying here. Mm-hmm. Something's happening with you right now, and we've got to solve it right now. And if I have to call somebody right now to help you with whatever this is, I will do that right now. I'll counsel the rest of the day and get somebody in here to teach the rest of my classes. But we need to get in here. Something's happening. So anyway, he told me what it was. His household was abusive. And his dad was the kind that would like hang his mom over the balcony railing to drop her and all that. And he had his, I think it was his 16th birthday. And his mom had tried to make it so nice, but the dad came crashing in and then started beating up the mom. And this boy had punched him to get him off his mom. So now he's couch surfing. And now, so I said, well, what is your greatest fear? And he said, my greatest fear is that I'm going to become just like my dad. It's eating me up. And I don't know what to do. And I said, well, what I'd like you to do is write. He was very smart and he was in my non-academic class. I said, I'd like you to write about what's really happening. What is your experience? And he came back with this poem the next day. I spent the day, we got him into an apartment. I got him we did all this in one day, got him a social worker, got him a counselor, got him everything all in one day. Got the guidance counselor. We were on it. We rocked that right out for this kid. Right. Amazing. And so anyway, he wrote this poem and it was about, I wish I had it. I would show it to you because I use it in my convention. He said I could, but it was about how he was feeling like he was being sucked into the weeds and being pulled under, but he could hear these voices, dark voices telling him that he was, useless and nothing was going to happen and he's terrible, which is basically his dad's voice, but it's also the dark side. And so he, it was sucking him under into these weeds. And I said, okay, what I'd like you to do, he came with that in class. And I said, what I'd like you to do is to take each line and I want you to convert each line, the poem was about this long, each line into the man you're becoming. The man you're becoming. Oh, he was gone for 15 minutes at the back of the classroom, wrote the whole thing. It's a dramatic change from here to here. And I said, okay, so I would like you to stay with me for grade 10, grade 11, grade 12. And we're going to work on making sure that you get to be that man you're becoming. We're not, because I didn't want him off his blueprint. His blueprint was to live this beautiful, beautiful life. So when I see these pests, I don't see a pest. I see somebody, a child there that's experiencing something. We need to get the bottom of it.
Interesting. And so those ones that we don't get to the bottom to, that we, haphazardly just ignore, don't tend to, are those the ones that end up committing suicide?
Well, a more optimistic thinking, hopefully there's another teacher who will see them. Because I have had some of my students come back to me. You know, I had this girl in my class where her eyes were dead. And I said, come in and have lunch with me today. And it turned out, you know, I didn't know she was thinking about suicide at the time, but she needed to hear one of my spiritual stories to explain what was happening to her in her life. And I said, well, let's spend the rest of this semester helping you recover your voice, because I was a writing teacher, right? Recover your voice, getting your spirit back in your body, getting you back. And now I know the word is blueprint, getting you back onto your blueprint so you don't let it fall apart too long. And just stay with me the rest. You have to come every day. Don't skip a day, because we've got to reset every day until this is so normal for you to be back on your blueprint. And I remember she had failed her first semester in my grade 12 class. She didn't have a good enough mark to get into university, so she was taking my class, and she scored like 98% on a statewide exam. And she said, it's because you showed me how to recover myself, my voice, who I am. I was writing authentically. And I loved being a writing teacher, because that's what it is, right? Finding your voice. And I had coffee with her about 5 years ago. She found me on Facebook. And so we went for coffee over here. I point over here because I have a whole city skyline view out my window. Those are all windows over there. Anyway, she burst into tears when she saw me, and she said, what you didn't know makes me cry, okay, Liz, because I love them so much. And she said, I had planned it all out how I was going to kill myself. And I said, what did I do to make you stop? She said, you looked over at me and you said, I see you. Come and have lunch. And I used to just, you know, I was one of those teachers, desk at the door, high integrity, door open, but you need to come in here and just tell me what it is. And if I can help you, I will. And if I can't help you, I will find somebody who knows how to help you. But usually I knew how to help them. Yeah. So, you know, she said, you said, I see you. And isn't that what everybody wants in their life? To be seen, to be heard, to express your voice.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, Margot, you know, when you say dead eyes, you know, I personally have seen dark eyes, and I don't know if we're referencing the same thing. Can you describe?
Like there's no life in them.
Yeah.
There's no life. The spirit, because your spirit's in you. Well, hopefully it is. Some people's spirit has already, you know, like when my mom was passing, I was with her, and, you know, I was helping her understand her spiritual experience as she was getting ready to make her transition. And, you know, her spirit was already over at the other side. It was just her body waiting to catch up. But you can see some people where their spirit's just not in their eyes.
Yeah. So I sometimes see what I refer to as dark eyes, but I see a lot of rage in the dark eyes. And from like a trauma-based perspective, you know, part of the body's physiological response to trauma, whether it's spirit, you know, a trauma that's affecting your spirit or any other aspect of you, the body's physiological response is for the black pupils to get larger in that fight, flight, or freeze. And so I'm just wondering if it's part of that, but maybe not in the rage stage.
I have lots to say on that, but I don't want to do it here because we're kind of getting, because I have to be really conscious that I'm talking to more than just you. And, you know, sometimes I forget. I think it's just you and me in a room and we're talking. But it is a very important topic, but I don't want to do it in this forum. Okay. Like I had students who had that. And I'd say, I'd like you to come in. And then I would help them with that too. And they came back to me after they graduated as well. And they said, Ms. McKinnon, you have to quit teaching, get out to the world, You saved my life. And other teachers have come back to me saying, oh yeah, that one said you saved their life. That one said you saved their life. Saving their lives, right?
You to you.
Well, you know, my daughter was actually saying that. We were talking about what our great somebody had asked me, what was my mother's greatest accomplishment? My mom's greatest accomplishment was she could make anyone laugh, even if they were just waiting behind her at the grocery store. She'd just have everybody howling. She was just that funny. And I said, well, what would you say your mother, I was saying that to my daughter, what would you say your mother's greatest accomplishment is? And she said, all those kids that come back to you as adults and say, you saved my life.
I would agree. Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, Margot, where can people find your book and how can they get in contact with you? Maybe your website or things like that.
Well, so the book is here. You'll find it on my website. I don't have it on Amazon.
Okay.
Okay, you buy and you might find a few copies on Amazon, and they are like $100 or so. I found one on there one time for $2,500. But go to my website. It's Canadian, $27.98, which for Americans is a lot less because we're 26% less for Americans. But anyway, find it off. You can easily buy it. I'll pop it in the mail. I pop it, I wrap it for you. It goes to your house straight from me. It's not coming out of some warehouse. It's me wrapping it lovingly for you. And I'll send it out to you. And hey, you know, it's such a great thing for you and your friends to sit and say, let's go through this together and let's work our way through and figure out and think about our families and our kids and how we're interacting, where we want to elevate, what we want to do in the next 2024. So it's really fantastic for that, a book club or whatever, if you want it to order that up. And you can find it on my website, www.drmargotmckinnon.com. So drmargotmckinnon.com. I have a web, you can email me too. Like if you want to send me an email, which is drmargotmckinnon@gmail.com. If you have a question or something. And you can always book a session with me if you want to, really want to go into some of these topics that we did. But I'm starting I do webinar series. I call them webinars, but it's me teaching online. But we're starting a whole new series in January. And this is for people who say, you know what, I think I'm spirit dominant. I want to challenge myself to step into a leadership role. I want to know how to move from step to step. And our big finale is to make our digital vision board where we get our pictures from our blueprint to make sure we're back on it.
I love that. What a great idea. Yeah. So
thanks.
All right. So people reach out, give her an email, shoot her some comments, and
yes,
it was such a pleasure, Margot. I'm so glad that we were able to connect.
Well, same. Someday, hopefully, we'll meet in person.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.